Hello everyone and welcome to the Arizona Flight Training Workgroup AFTW meeting. It is July 8th, 2020. My name is Jim Pitman. I am one of the many volunteers that helps to keep things working here. We currently have 44 participants at this online meeting. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to come. And we pride ourselves on having a leaderless organization. It's really quite amazing. The AFTW started 18 years ago. I believe it was June of 20. Let's see, when was that? It would have been 2002. So 18 years ago. And the first project that we had was figuring out updated procedures for Casa Grande. And here we are 18 days later, still refining it. But we've done a lot since then. AFTW.org is the website. If you're new to the group, please check that out. We have a lot of great information there. And I've been able to participate on and off over the years, and I'm blessed to have a schedule now that allows me to jump in a little more than usual. Being leaderless, we don't have a president. We don't really have no budget, no treasury, nothing like that. So everything we do is just people pitching in and helping out, and you guys all being here today is a big part of that. And so we thank you for that. In recent history, Stacy Elliott has done a lot to help with the iPad and Android overlays that we use for the practice areas. And Brent Crow has done a lot recently conducting meetings. And both of those gentlemen have work responsibilities today, might be able to join in briefly, but we're unavailable to help run the meeting. So you get the Jim show today. I apologize up front. I do have an agenda here that we're going to stick to. Kind of go through some housekeeping items real quick. We are recording this, so please mind your camera. It's not required that you have your video, but we're happy to see your smiling face. Do a little bit of socializing as we talk, and so if you want to show your camera, please do, and please be aware of anyone or anything walking behind you that you might not want videotaped. And for attendance purposes, please ensure that your name is displayed so we can see it on the participants. And Ernie Copeland is helping us out from the FAA office. Ernie, if you don't mind, take some screenshots or otherwise copy down who we've got for participants. And this meeting is available for Wings credit. So if you did not yet, you can register at faasafety.gov and just put a note in the remarks, the chat here in the meeting with your email address, and Ernie can give you credit, or we can do that after the meeting. Make sure you get Wings credit for this meeting. Anyone who pre-registered at faasafety.gov, we can go by the attendance list to give you credit for that. So I still see a couple of names. We only have a first name, and if you don't mind, let's see how it does it. When you hover over your name on a computer, I don't know how it is on a tablet, but on a computer, open up on the Zoom controls, go to participants.
Okay.
And hold on, I got a couple people here to mute. There we go. Everyone should be muted. So when you open up on the Zoom controls, go to participants, and then when you hover over your name, click more. And that allows you to rename yourself. So if it's only showing iPhone or your first name, if you could rename yourself so we see your first and last name, that'll greatly help us out as we take attendance. And if you want to turn your video off, that's fine. But again, we'd love to see your smiling face. If you have a question or anything you want to bring up during the meeting, please use the chat feature. There's also a way you can raise your hand. When you're on the participants page, you can go to more. Actually, where is the raise your hand? Okay, I'm not seeing it right now. But I was going to also say that's not the best way because we have so many participants. We don't see everyone at one time. So if you want to just unmute yourself and say, hey, Jim, hold on, I've got a question, or I want to throw something in on that topic, that's fine. Just as long as we're not all talking over each other, I think we'll be okay. Otherwise, let's keep everyone muted when they're not talking so we don't have any background noise. Please try to avoid side conversations in the chat. Ernie's got a full-time job just watching for things we need to talk about during the meeting. So if 2 or 3 people go off having a side conversation in the chat, it makes it tough for him to find the things that we need to talk about. So please try to keep the chat just to business that we need to talk about during the meeting. That really helps us out. All right, let me make sure I got everything there. Ernie, anything else you want to add as far as housekeeping? You can unmute and say hi to everybody. Appreciate you helping to run the meeting.
Yeah, I don't have anything, but we don't need to take roll. I got analytics I can do off of the Zoom meeting.
Wonderful.
I mean, who's been on and how long they've been on.
Wonderful. Very good. So we know if you leave early.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate everyone being here. So we do have a guest speaker today, and I was hoping to start with that. I don't know if he made it on yet. We got a phone number here. I'm going to unmute. Who has area code 405? Who's that?
This is Larry. I made it on.
Excellent. Is that you, area code 405?
Yeah.
All right. Just while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to rename you here. So this is Larry Hopper, everyone, from the National Weather Service, based here in the Phoenix office. And, well, to give you a proper introduction, well, first of all, I don't know where the policies come from. We don't have to get into the details, but the National Weather Service does not want Larry doing Zoom meetings. And so he is here via phone. So what I'm going to do is actually minimize this and open up his presentation so you guys aren't just looking at my smiling face. And as far as an introduction, if this is still accurate, Larry, you can correct me, but he is the acting warning coordination meteorologist and aviation program manager for the Phoenix office of the National Weather Service. That is quite a mouthful. Is that your current title, Larry?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Myself and another guy are rotating every 6 weeks to our schedules. But basically, we're the manager that's in charge of all the partner relationships for the lower deserts of Arizona and Southeast California. So we talk to the state DOC, we talk to the governor's office, AHS, ADOT, all the airports, and all the emergency managers and media. So
very good.
That's our current job. But right now, I'm actually not in that role for this 6 weeks. I'm back in my senior meteorologist, and I'm always the aviation program manager. So.
Very good. And is it accurate to say that you and your team are the ones that make the terminal forecast that we look at every day?
Yes, we give the task.
There you go. So this is the TAF man.
Yeah,
he does much more than that, but I just think it's cool to get the face or at least the voice behind the TAF, right? And we have real people that are out there doing this work every 4 times a day. So, all right. So with that, I'm going to run the slideshow for Zoom. You guys should be seeing that. And Larry, take it away. We got your slides up, and we'll try to stay coordinated here.
And it's in PowerPoint or Google Slides?
The PowerPoint.
Okay, excellent. There's one that's an animation. I'll play with that one. So this is the title slide. Basically, just want to go over our partnership with your work group, AFTW, and then also make sure that we cover the monsoon outlook. And so to the next slide, I just want to briefly cover the aviation program here at Sky Harbor. Here in the Phoenix area in Southeast California, because this is my normal regular job, and I'm not in the acting warning coordination meteorologist role. So essentially, we do all your forecasts and the watch warnings and advisories that you receive. The biggest thing that we do for aviation is terminal airborne forecasts or TAFs, but we also do airport weather warnings for specific airports, including Mesa Gateway, which we just started this year for lightning only. But we also do airport weather warnings for Deer Valley Airport due to how busy that particular airport is from a GA standpoint. And then also Phoenix Sky Harbor. Obviously, Phoenix Sky Harbor and Deer Valley are our 2 busiest airports, and actually Mesa Gateway is our 3rd busiest airport in the metro area. And so they're both top 34 airports in the country in terms of terminal operations from takeoffs and landings each day. And in the case of Deer Valley in particular, they don't have quite as much staffing as the other airports. They do need a lot more
slides
and things of that to occur. So we also do specialized support. When the Super Bowl comes in a couple of years, we'll be staffing the EOC at Phoenix Sky Harbor for that. And then we also do a lot of local research and outreach, including monthly exercises at Sky Harbor, and then also in the months we try to give a lot of talks with weather preparedness. And I've also given a lot of talks at flight schools in the area throughout the year just in preparation for our thunderstorm season here during the monsoon. On the next slide, we do issue the terminal air-norm forecast, as Jim was saying. This is an example from an event we had in 2018 in August. The basics I want to get across to you is that we do strive to write what we call quote-unquote practically perfect tasks, typically in 6 lines or less, although I think we're going to start allowing 8 lines for the 30-hour tasks like the Sky Harbor and the core 30 airports across the country, and that will probably start here at some point this year, maybe during the monsoon, maybe later on in the year. We typically add very specific details for the first 12 hours, and of course, this is what we call deterministic forecast. So it's meant to represent the most likely forecast, but we also do have probabilistic forecasts that we are oftentimes giving verbally to TRACON and Tower at Phoenix for that, to give them kind of an idea of the range possibilities. And we also do that in our area forecast discussion and to some extent in our grids as well. Beyond the first 12 hours, we really just highlight specific events for planning. We don't really go into great details because really for most of our flights, with the exception of a handful of some international flights into Sky Harbor, generally speaking, and right now we don't have any of those, so generally speaking, you know, the beyond 12 hours is really just for planning for those long-term flights.
Jim,
you
there's
go to
no
the next
slides.
slide. What did you say?
There's no slides showing up.
All right, sorry, I was muted. Apparently, what are you guys looking at right now? Are you looking at me?
We're seeing everybody except the slide.
Everybody.
All right, let's try it this way. I apologize. Thank you for saying something. We're gonna do here. Are you seeing it now?
Yeah.
You guys are seeing it now? All right. So real quick, just so I apologize. I believe that will be on the recording. It just wasn't on Zoom. So I think we're I think we're good there. I got multiple devices going on here. So
Okay.
I think we're right.
I'm on the second terminal air-norm forecast.
With the red boxes?
Yeah, the red box.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're on track.
Excellent. So with the actual path, thunderstorms at any time at all. So if we're going to have even one lightning strike, we try to make sure that it's in the path. And so what that means is that we really have three ways that we can represent thunderstorms. So what you see here in the second line of this path is we have VCTS. That stands for vicinity thunderstorms. So really it's a high confidence or greater than a 50% chance that we will have thunderstorms within the 5 to 10 mile donut ring, so to speak, of the airport or in the quote unquote vicinity. And we've been doing a research project with the Hollings scholar that we have, who unfortunately had to stay in Virginia remotely, and she was a student of Virginia Tech, so she couldn't come during COVID. But she found that really 45% of our storms at Phoenix Sky Harbor actually only stay within the vicinity range ring. They don't ever get within 5 miles, but they are within 5 to 10 statute miles. And of course, they can still cause tremendous dust impacts and tremendous wind gust impacts at the actual airport. We're in the process of looking at that. When we go to a tempo TS group, that means that we have a high confidence or a greater than 50% chance of temporary storms within 5 statute miles of the airport. So that means that we believe that the storms will actually affect the airport
within the 0 to 5 mile range ring. And that when we say tempo, if we have a 1 hour tempo group, that means that for half that time or 30 minutes, we think we're going to see thunderstorms at that airport. If we put a tempo group in for 2 hours, that means for an hour of that 2 hour period, we expect to see thunderstorms. Of course, realize that a lot of our commercial carriers, they typically plan a 1 hour both sides. So I've instructed our staff to try to keep those tempo groups and those prevailing thunderstorm groups in the third option. If we actually just think it's definitely going to be happening, then, you know, at the last minute, sometimes we'll actually throw the prevailing group in there. And then the VCTS groups in there, I try to keep them as short as possible with our staff so that they're not, you know, constraining airports for too long, because we know they're going to plan typically for 1 hour on both sides anyway. But that's kind of what I would get across to you all, is try to be like the dispatchers for all the different airlines and basically add an hour to both sides of that, especially when it's at the farther ranges of the forecast. If it's, say, we're forecasting right now for this evening, you know, that could obviously easily be off by an hour either way. If you go to the next slide, this is a great website to look at for Aviation Weather Center. It gives you all the paths and METARs and PIREPs, SIGMETs and AirMets across the country in this interactive map, and they've really worked hard. but this chart kind of color codes and kind of interprets all that information for you. So again, if you have any questions about this, please feel free to give me a ring or an email so I can go over that with you, because it is really important we understand that. Finally, if we go to the next slide, just want to reiterate that our aviation forecast discussions are issued at least 4 times a day. When I first got here, we were only issuing them kind of irregularly, about 3 times a day. Now, I got them issuing them with every single task cycle. And this is typically what happens in most parts of the country, where there'll be 0Z, 6Z, 12Z, and 18Z. And on most days, we will split it out to South Central Arizona, including Sky Harbor, Mesa Gateway, Scottsdale, and now because we do tasks for Deer Valley, though we didn't at the time that this discussion was done, that is in there as well. We split Southeast California and Southwest Arizona in a separate discussion, so you don't have to bother with reading that. And that was kind of a request from the commercial partners to kind of easily be able to see the airports that they're most interested in, which is Sky Harbor and Mesa Gateway. And so when you take a look at this, we give our details, confidence, and kind of that uncertainty information, like this is the most likely occurrence, but this could also happen. And even though it's not as high of a chance, we want to make sure that you have a range of possibilities there. If you go to the next slide, we'll get kind of into the monsoon discussion. And so this is frequently misunderstood by a lot of people, and they'll call thunderstorms monsoons. And really what the monsoon season is it's just a seasonal reversal in a prevailing wind flow pattern. And so for about 9 months of the year or so, we typically have winds at upper levels out of the west-southwest. It's a very dry flow for most of the time, except in the wintertime, we get kind of these Pineapple Express deep moisture plumes in here. For the most part, it's just a very dry flow. Whenever we get into the early summer months, this year might be a little bit later than usual, again, like last year, it might be more like late July instead of the first half of July. Although we've already had a monsoonal surge last week, we're probably not going to get one for a couple more weeks. What happens is once this ridge starts to build over the southern plains of Texas and Oklahoma and New Mexico and into Mexico, once it really develops and builds, we can actually get kind of southerly and southeasterly flow on the western sides of that ridge. So that brings in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico at upper levels. It brings in thunderstorms into the Mexican mountains that can slowly kind of advect in moisture from those as well into southern Arizona. And then that convection can sometimes cause moisture surges in the Gulf of California that gets steered into Arizona. And so even though we say the monsoon season is from June 15th to September 30th, that's just like hurricane season being from June 1st to November 30th. It really varies in reality. We can occasionally see storms outside of that. We did get kind of a weird type monsoonal type storm pattern at the end of May, early June. We've already had one kind of in southeast Arizona and northern Arizona over the last Friday and Saturday. But in general, we just get these moisture surges lasting 2 to 4 days. They typically are most frequent in the second half of July through the Labor Day weekend or so, with some, a couple events on the fringes of that. And then we dry back out again, and then we get another moisture surge for 2 to 4 days and dry back out again. In terms of the types of flow patterns we most commonly experience, we have kind of the southeasterly flow pattern, which is the most common one. And that one typically brings us a lot of dust because of where the storms form along the I-10 corridor. There's just a lot of dust, especially a little bit closer to Tucson, and that can loft into the air and then get transported into the Phoenix metro. When you look at northeasterly flow situations, those are cases where the high pressure actually gets north of Arizona, typically into the Great Basin towards Nevada and Utah. And that can actually create very, very strong flow from the northeast, which coincident with usually a front that's going into, South Texas or Central Texas. That can trigger convection that a day or two later actually circles around the high and back into Arizona. That typically gives us a lot more severe weather, sometimes dust as well. And then flash flooding tends to happen more with what I call these westerly flow events, where we get a ridge off the coast of Baja California, and we get kind of a ridge off, in the Gulf Coast area or Florida, and we're kind of stuck in this weak flow pattern between we get some sort of westerly disturbance, and that can a lot of times affect in Gulf moisture, especially if we have Gulf California and Mexico, and then Pacific moisture, depending upon where the disturbance is at and what kind of flow pattern we have. That we typically get more tropical remnants with this westerly flow regime. We tend to get more flooding in those types of cases. So if the next slide shows when the weekly chance of our first monsoonal rain in Phoenix is, and as you can see, basically it's usually right around today or yesterday. Our median day where we get measurable rainfall at Sky Harbor is usually July 7th, but our median day where we get 1/10 of an inch of rain, we have a more significant rainfall event, is typically around July 16th. Of course, it's happened as late as the August 14th for our latest day with measurable rainfall, and August 29th for our latest day with more significant rainfall. And last year, as you can see on this graph, You know, our first 0.01 day last year was July 24th, and our first more significant precip day was July 30th. So it's getting kind of towards the 90th percentile last year in terms of how late it was. As you go to the next slide, you'll see that again, this year looks like another delayed onset. And part of that's because we weren't really able to set up the high pressure over Texas like we usually are. But that high pressure is now in the process of setting up over Texas and New Mexico. It's going to expand and broaden over Arizona as we get into Friday and the weekend. That's going to give us some period of very, very hot temperatures. As you can see, most of the country is going to be very hot. And then that's also going to therefore keep us very dry because it's going to kind of seal us off to moisture coming in from the south. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the three-month outlook for both temperature and precipitation. You see that for temperature, again, pretty much the entire country is favored to be above average for warmer than normal temperatures. Again, part of that is because we're at the end of our 30-year climate period from 1981 to 2010. Because of climate change towards the end of the decade, it just makes it where the odds are already going to be tilted towards above normal temperatures. But we do have much higher odds than most of the rest of the country does for that. But for precipitation, we're still not really seeing a very clear signal towards a wet or dry season. All we see right now is that the first few weeks are going to be dry. And a lot of times the first weeks of the monsoon aren't very wet anyway. So just because the first few weeks aren't wet doesn't mean we can't have a very wet season. 2014 was an extremely wet season, even though it really didn't generally get going until August. And August and September were very, very wet with some very significant flooding. To go to the next slide, this slide just kind of reiterates a lot of what I've said. Last year was the 9th driest monsoon on record for the Southwest. We don't expect to see that again, but of course we are having a similar delayed onset to what we saw last year. Though last year there was more of an indication that we were going to be drier than normal going into the season. Again, we get about a third of our rainfall in Phoenix and in Flagstaff for this. Tucson tends to get more than half of their rainfall each year from the monsoon, so it's a very big contributor for them. They get similar amounts to us during the winter season. And then over 500,000 lightning strikes are observed each year. And as you can see from the pie chart, again, you know, very strongly tilted towards above normal, basically no chance below normal for temperature. Precipitation could be any of them, could be above, below, or near normal. To go to the next slide, this is kind of a good thing to keep tabs each day on the monsoon here in Phoenix. We post this daily on our website, our homepage, on the National Weather Service site, and also on our Facebook and Twitter handles, which is NWS Phoenix for both. We do make updates as needed, and so what you see here is that if we have green for lightning, and which is what you should be most concerned about, that just means that we don't think we have much of a chance of storms at all. If we put yellow, that means isolated storms will be possible. Sometimes we'll put mostly higher terrain there as opposed to just the whole area if it's blank. That just means that we really think a lot of the storms are going to stay north and east of the Phoenix metro. If we don't put that, we have yellow, it means we think they could get in. If we put orange, it means that isolated scattered storms are likely. We could start to see some more significant impacts for dust and for flash flooding and for thunderstorm winds, depending upon what we see that day. Once we get to the reds and to the extreme for purple, those are really, really high confidence events. Typically, they happen more in September and October as we kind of transition out of the monsoon and have this kind of hybrid monsoon kind of transition to the cool season type flow regime. That tends to be when we get the greatest number of hailstorms and even occasionally, like we saw last September, new rivers, some tornadoes as well. If you go to the next slide, I just want to quickly cover what the difference is between a watch and a warning. A watch just means that conditions are very favorable for hazardous weather conditions, whereas a warning means that they're actually imminent and occurring. So watches we may put out for several days in advance. If it was related to heat, it may just be a couple hours if it's for severe thunderstorms. We rarely issue severe thunderstorm watches, but if we issue a severe thunderstorm watch, that means that you should really take heed of that because we have high confidence we're probably going to get pretty significant storms in the Phoenix metro that day. Once we go to the warning level, then that means that if it's flash flooding, it might go for a severe thunderstorm might be half an hour to an hour. But we try to have a good progression on really high confidence days. We issue the watch, say mid-afternoon, like you see here at 3:40, followed by the storms develop. We get a severe thunderstorm warning for the Phoenix metro at 5:56, airport weather warning that we issue for Sky Harbor and for Deer Valley at 5:59, and then dust storm warning at 6:03, and then the impact occurs at 6:19. Whenever all that occurs in tandem and is a great way it works out, we're super happy, and hopefully you guys are paying attention and getting good service. Occasionally, we'll still get storms where we don't always get to follow the warning out before some of the impacts are observed, but typically we try to do our best with that. To go to the next slide, this is just kind of going to show you the origin of dust storms with the dot, and then the actual aerial coverage that they cover, which you can see is quite large. Some of these storms, particularly one in 2016 and another one in 2018, go across they develop in South Central Arizona, and they move all the way across Southwest Arizona into even Southeast California. So these are really, really significant dust storms, but you can see that the Phoenix Metro is kind of the bullseye for all of them. They start generally between Phoenix and Tucson, and they move on up in here and affect dust. If you don't like dust, you should probably move to Tucson because they don't get nearly as much as we do. And of course, we know that that has tremendous impacts on aircraft as well. If you go to the next slide, this is the third year that we've had our polygon dust storm warnings. And so this has been great because we no longer have to warn all of America, all the 4 to 5 million people that live here. If you click on the next slide, click again, you'll see the new polygon warnings going into effect for the area outlined in actually white, not black. If you click on the next slide, you can see that instead of alerting 100,000 phones, we're just alerting 100,000 or 200,000 phones instead of the full 4 to 5 million. So again, that's a 90, if you click on the next slide, that's a 97.5 reduction in phones alerted. One final thing, or two final things here. I just want to point out our experimental heat risk tool on the heat side. If you're on that one, Jim, this is our main driver of heat warnings, and I really want to cover this because we are expecting some very significant heat, probably the most significant heat we've seen. We didn't see this last year, so since 2018, this weekend. We don't usually see the magentas on our heat risk very often, but that just means that we have multiple days of heat that's kind of in the top 5% of what we see for a given day. We're going to have about 4, maybe even 5 days of heat that will be in the top 5% of heat for that day. And we are at the hottest time of the year for us. And so we probably will have at least a record go down one day this weekend, maybe multiple days we'll have record heat. So that excessive heat watch for the Phoenix Metro is in effect for Friday to Monday. For all of South Central, Southwestern, and Southeastern Arizona, it's in effect Saturday through Monday. Sunday looks like to be the hottest day. Highs in Phoenix will probably be somewhere between 115 and 119 is what we're looking at right now. And finally, just want to make sure in the last slide that you have 6 ways to receive weather warnings. You can get them through weather apps, weather radio, commercial radio, television, mass notification, social media. The key thing is if you're going to watch the Weather Channel, just make sure that if we're not the big lead story at the time, which typically we won't be, you want to listen to your local news. You want to listen to your local radio stations and your TV stations because they will be covering what we're covering. They're talking to us through chat internally. They're calling us on the phone. We're trying to work with them to get our message out. Again, Twitter and Facebook are great ways as well. We really have the most frequent posts on Twitter during weather events. And if you have the last slide, that's it. If you guys have any questions, ladies have any questions, there's my email address, and our operations line for aviation is there, although please try to use that very sparingly because we try to keep that open for TRACON and Tower, especially during severe weather. They call it very frequently. So, any questions?
All right. Thank you, Larry. We appreciate it. If anyone has a question, you should be able to unmute yourself. If you're on a phone, it's *6. If you're on a computer or tablet, there should just be a button to unmute. See if anyone has any questions.
And I apologize for our Zoom issues. I keep bringing them up every time this comes up. Eventually, it'll change, I hope. So.
Well, long as we're, thank you. We're working with it. Long as we're apologizing for everyone who's here live and for anyone who's watching this recording that will hopefully come out. Let me apologize. I thought I had this worked out. My adult son and I, we tested it. The reason it's complicated is we're using an FAA Zoom system. It's not the normal Zoom where you can just easily record. So I've got desktop recording software running. I've got multiple screens. I've got multiple windows trying to make this work. I got multiple inputs. And at this point, I'm not exactly sure what got recorded and what didn't. So I apologize for being off. I was off on the slides there for a little bit in the middle. But we got the great content, Larry. Thank you so much. Anyone have a question? Looks like Carrie's got a question. You're unmuted. Go ahead, Carrie.
I've got a comment. Some of the seminars that Jim and I have put together during this time of the year, I've always shown the fighter index of thermal stress. I couldn't bring it up on the screen, but if you Google it or Bing it, it will show that it's a combination of heat and humidity. And it can put you in the danger zone as far as being outside in the environment. So I think it's important to emphasize, particularly with students and in addition to just the heat and the humidity that we're putting up with, having to wear masks on top of it probably adds another % or 2 to that level of thermal stress. So I think please, for the flight schools, be very cognizant of what is going on out there this time of year with the heat and the humidity.
Definitely. And to make sure we give credit where it's due, you're talking about the seminars you do with Jim Anderson, correct?
That's correct.
Very good. We appreciate you, Carrie and Jim Anderson, for all the hard work you guys are doing out there. All right. Anything else for Larry? Let me see. Jim, go ahead. You got a comment?
Yeah, Larry, thanks for the presentation. You mentioned earlier there's going to be a character expansion on the internal forecast. Or can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I don't want to go into too many details because I'm not sure when they will take effect, but I was on the National Direct team really 2 years ago. So I think it's going through the final FAA processes. But the general thought is that for the 30-hour task, of which is the core 30 airports and some that are just a little bit below that, Phoenix Sky Harbor will be our only one. That will go to possibly up to 8 lines. So it'll give us some flexibility for that. I don't know when that's going to take effect. I've told our forecasters if on occasion they want to do it, I don't care anymore to keep it at 6 lines because I know it's going to change. Some other changes that may occur, it looks like I have stopped the VCTS going away change for now, which I led with some commercial partners and some other partners. Again, we're doing a research project on that too locally to kind of look at percentages, which shows that almost half of our storms are actually VCTS. It's about a third in some other parts of the country. And so we're looking at that to kind of just give some data to let people know that. But the Tempo TS group actually may be allowed beyond 9 hours. That's something that is, again, not completely finalized, but that is something that may occur. They've tossed around some other ideas too, like allowing Prop 30 in the first 9, but I think they're going to go the Tempo TS route. Again, until it's finalized, this is just all somewhat speculation. And then there's going to be a higher emphasis on making sure the wind direction is correct regardless of wind speed, provided the wind speeds are above like 6 or 7 knots. In the past, there's been, I think, a 12 knot requirement in 30 degrees. And some of us here in Phoenix and Las Vegas and the New York airports, like, that doesn't really work for us. We really have to know what flow we're in, particularly for our single runway airports that we all have in Phoenix. And so we've put it locally, we've started putting a much higher emphasis, particularly at Sky Harbor. But even some at Mesa Gateway and Scottsdale and Deer Valley, and trying to make sure that wind direction is correct to have people in the right flows, provided the flow is more than 7 knots. So I've been told on occasion that some commercial pilots from airlines that shall remain nameless don't want to take a 3-knot tailwind, and that sometimes happens as well. So sometimes they want to make sure they're in the right flow, even if it's a few knots. So that's kind of what's coming the way. There's some other things in there, but those will probably be the biggest, most sensible changes. But again, until it's finalized, I can't say for sure. It's been many, many iterations over the past couple of years on that.
Sounds like there's a lot going on. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Yep.
For one other change to cover, we are going to be moving to digital aviation services. Probably at some point in the fall or winter, you'll start to see gridded forecasts online of visibility and ceiling. But when that occurs, I'll do a separate 5 or 10 minute presentation just to show you that. But just be aware that in the next 6 months or so, that may be coming. It definitely won't come before October 1st, but you may, for this monsoon, but you may see it in the fall or winter.
All right, very good. So I'm just pulling it up so anyone can see that if they don't know what ADDS is, I thought I had it bookmarked here. It should just be aviationweather.gov. So if you go adds.aviationweather.gov, sorry, I'm trying to look around my big microphone here. Nope, that wasn't it. What's the direct link for ADDS? Or the easiest way to get to it. I thought it was just.
It was on slide 5. Aviationweather.com, I think, is on there.
Aviation weather.
I got a question for Larry as well, when possible.
Go ahead with your question while I'm looking for ADDS. Apparently I haven't been here in a while. I thought I had it bookmarked if it didn't pop right up.
Hey Larry, my name's Randy. I'm an instructor at Mesa Gateway, and maybe some DPs might know the answer to this. So one of the questions or ground lessons I give to students is, what the ingredients that create a thunderstorm, which is typically sufficient water vapor, unstable lapse rate, and an uplifting force. My question for you is kind of between those 3 ingredients that create a thunderstorm, which one of those and kind of what different percentages would create more like lightning or create more lightning and thunder, or which ones would kind of create more of the different outcomes of a thunderstorm, if that makes sense?
So probably the most important one for thunderstorm development is probably instability. I'd say that's typically our limiting factor here. We had moisture, although I say that we had moisture and instability on Friday, and my coworker and I were pretty concerned we were going to get early development in Phoenix, and a lot of models were hinting at it, and it tried really hard, but because we didn't have any lift, it didn't happen. The lift kind of passed with a disturbance that moved north into Flagstaff's area and kind of timed perfectly for them, where they had really good coverage of storms on Friday. So I think in terms of moisture, that can give us just some showery type activities, especially if it's overnight. Lift is really important because without it, a lot of times you can't get storms, but it's really the instability because we a lot of times have kind of a mid-level, say 2 to 4 mile kind of stable layer. It makes it hard for us to get past that sometimes. But sometimes we get outflows into the valley. We think we only got about 10% chance of showers because of the instability, and then we get an outflow, say it's 114 with 50 dew points, and then when outflow comes in, now it's 100 with 60 dew points, and the second outflow comes in and can really take advantage of that. So we call it kind of like a Pac-Man effect, where you get like a northeasterly outflow and a southeasterly outflow. When you get both of those, a lot of times that will be enough lift to generate it. So probably instability is the most important one. The lift is really important. And then kind of the fourth factor that is in there is shear. We tend to get that a lot in the northeasterly flow events. As organization to our storms, that almost ensures you have a very widespread outflow that is tied to the actual thunderstorms, especially if you can get the anvil to go off to northeast at upper levels instead of over the storms themselves. And that really, our really big storm days are those days. And again, if for your group at Mesa Gateway, I've given some talks out there to different groups before. If you want me to give a talk at some point to your students virtually or in person when COVID ends, I can absolutely do that. We go into a lot more detail. It's more like an hour seminar where I can go into those issues more specifically.
Very good. All right, we're going to keep things moving. So everyone's got his contact info there. Anyone who's not muted out, go ahead and mute out. Thank you. And Larry, we really appreciate your time. We know you've got, we got one more real quick. Who's that?
Yeah, Jackie.
Oh, go ahead, Jackie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a quick question?
I use TAFs all the time. Most of my students, as you know, are primary. However, I use the MOS very often. And I heard that may become official. And for my primary students, I find that to be super accurate when it's broken down into a couple of hour segments. What's any comment on that?
What is the thing that you use? The
model output statistics, the MOS I use. Pilot and ForeFlight primarily.
So actually, when we look at model output statistics, there are several different models that put them out. We really aggregate those into one and try to pick the most likely occurrence. I will say that the LAMP model, I still believe, is pretty good. If you're going to use one, that would, if you have students that are weather enthusiasts and want to kind of see something else in addition to our forecast, I'd look at the LAMP guidance, the GFS LAMP MOS, and they're going to be putting it out to 39 hours as soon as they haven't already. But in general, you really want to be looking at the TAF forecast as the official forecast, because we have MOS guidance from the NAM, we have MOS guidance from the Met, we have lots of different MOS guidance that gets aggregated into what our gridded forecast is. And then a lot of times on days where we actually have thunderstorms, the LAMP is probably the fastest responding, but even sometimes that'll be lagging. Same with NBM, sometimes it'll be second fastest responding and be lagging. But on days with thunderstorms, a lot of times LAMP guidance, when you're getting to the near term, like the 3 to 6 hours, they really don't do very well in those cases. When you're looking at an outlook, they probably do similarly to us. But keep in mind that models have to catch up on things, right? So if the models are having a problem doing that, then what forecasts are giving you on an hourly basis isn't going to update probably in time, especially not with how fast our thunderstorms develop.
Oh yeah.
Wintertime is different. It'll do better in winter for sure.
Right. Okay. That takes care of it. Thanks.
Okay.
That was way over my head. For anyone else, I have no trouble admitting that was way over my head. Jackie, you obviously asked the right person. So, Larry, thank you again for your time. We know you wear a lot of hats, and we really appreciate, especially this busy time of year, you taking some of your valuable time to to share your wisdom. Anytime I start thinking I know anything about weather, I just hang out with Larry for a few minutes, and I'm very humbled. So thank you.
Well, thank you again, and
yep.
You guys have a good one. I'll stay on the line too.
You're welcome to stay if you get someone else pulling you away. Don't feel bad if you need to go. We know you're a busy guy, so we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. And you should, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and mute you out. And everyone should be muted. All right. I'm not able to watch the chat. I got too much else going on here. So Ernie, just speak up if we got something, someone wants to chime in. I'm going to keep going down the agenda here. We're going to go through airspace, airports, and any training updates. Starting with airspace, just wanted to give an update on one of our current projects, which is the recommended procedures for practice instrument approaches in the Phoenix area. We're using the term Phoenix area pretty loosely. It extends down to the Tucson area. Basically, the any of the practice approaches that are being done regularly. So we've got AVQ in there, for example. So thank you. We've had a few volunteers that have helped out quite a bit, and we've had recently Sam Dargis has joined us. He's got a lot of experience as a flight instructor and an airline pilot. And he actually helps develop or has helped develop a lot of the training materials for my current airline. So he's offered to jump in and help with some of this. It's a work in progress. I'm going to share the link if I can get back. Anyone that wants to go look at it, if I did this correctly, the link I just shared in the chat will allow you to view the document. And if a whole bunch of little symbols start showing up here when you guys click on them, then I'll know I did that right. There they come. Welcome to my document. Hopefully you guys can only view. We don't want 100 editors in here. But the idea is to come up with some recommended procedures. We do have some feedback. I know we have Lee here today. Let me, Lee, can you unmute yourself? And there you go. Lee, welcome.
Thank
you have
you.
Video today? There you are. Yes, you do have video. I already saw your cool background. So I know we've had a few emails. For the sake of time, can you kind of summarize, or did Brian make it today? Does he want to chime in and tell us what's happening with our neighbors to the south and the
Brian
suggestions that you shared?
Yes, we're working on the approach recommendations, and we sent you the rough draft for your comments as we move forward. It's pretty complicated with the parachute operations. And I think Brian might want to discuss the non-towered airport operations.
And that's Brian Stamper, correct?
Yes.
Are you able to unmute yourself, Brian?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We got you. Yeah, take it away. Thank you for all your hard work. Give us a quick summary, what you think would be good for the group to hear.
So there's a couple of topics related to the non-towered stuff, and everybody's probably aware of some of the issues that we've been having specifically at Marana. And so it kind of ties into the instrument approach stuff, but I really wanted to make a completely separate topic and just quickly bring up an issue that has some of us concerned. So my goal is to just get feedback on whether other people think it might be an issue and maybe start the discussion on some things we can do to maybe improve it in the future. So one of the concerns that we're seeing is students, it's not just students, but I'm just going to kind of focus on students today, is the environment of training, like around Phoenix and stuff especially, is so dense with controlled airspace that we're worried that the students aren't getting as full of training as they could be on non-towered environments. So we just want to start the discussion on how we can improve that, how we can expose them more to non-towered environments. And it may be just as simple as when you do that dual cross country to one of the non-towered airports, that you, instead of just doing a quick stop and go to check the box, that you stay there, you do a couple stop and go takeoffs, you force the students to spend more time thinking about where they're going to go on the taxiways and make their own decisions in those environments, because I think some of us are worried that the training that is focused around the Phoenix area, they never have that opportunity to think about or to make their own decisions on where they're going. You know, you've got a controller telling you where to taxi, you got a controller telling you how to enter the pattern, you got a controller telling you how to exit the pattern. You're handed off to other controllers as you go from airport to airport. And so this is just something that we're we'd like the instructors and stuff to start thinking about is how they can add more non-towered exposure to their students. So I hope that makes sense. I condensed a discussion down as much as I could. So
we appreciate you having the brevity, and I'm putting the link to this advisory circular in the chat. So certainly this is not a new challenge, especially for high volume flight schools where things are very standardized. I know a lot of the schools that I do check rides at, the students always go to the same airports on their cross countries. Everything's very standardized with the syllabus and the training course outline. And obviously there's a lot of benefits to that for efficiency and standardization. There's two sides to that coin. It's also tough to have more real life experience like you're talking about and decision making opportunities. So I think that this is a worthy topic to bring up. And I will tell you that specifically on the non-towered airport operations and communications, the Chinese, Korean, and Indian students that I've observed, both doing check rides and being out around with my own clients. For example, Wickenburg is a popular non-towered airport that we'll frequent in the Northwest. They do a great job. Overall, they're trained very well on how to communicate. They make all of their calls, every leg of the pattern. Frankly, a lot of times they do a better job than some of the non-flight school students, just because they're so on the procedures. They make their turn, they make the call, they make the turn, they make the call. So from what I see up on the north, just speaking from my observations, they are doing good with the communication, but obviously mixing in an unfamiliar airport and parachute operations and all the other things you guys have going on down there, there's certainly a lot of concerns. So, and I'm just speaking mostly for the operators out of Deer Valley, Glendale, this side of town. I'm not sure what you guys are seeing coming out of Chandler or Gateway that might be doing cross countries down in your neck of the woods there in the Tucson area. So, anyone else want to unmute and chime in? We can have a brief discussion on this. Otherwise, our regular contact at aftw.org, go there and click on contact. You can send messages there. That's a good way to get it to those of us that are helping to kind of coordinate the communication on some of these projects. So thank you, Brian and Lee, for all your hard work. So not really anything else to say on the recommended instrument procedures other than please look over what we've got. Understand this is a very rough draft and we're just throwing stuff on right now, and then we'll go back and clean it up. The suggestions you guys sent for AVQ for Marana is I think it was 3 or 4 pages. Wonderful feedback. I'm hoping we can kind of condense. This isn't a must-have, but kind of my original vision, just to share this with you guys. Once this document's done, I kind of envisioned having a PDF where each airport fits on one page, kind of like an approach plate. So when we have it on our tablet, we can actually just pinch and zoom to get the information we want. So again, this is a very rough draft. It's not formatted or anything yet. We just want to get all the information on here, and maybe some airports will be 2 or even 3 pages, but as a general rule, we want to have just kind of one airport per page. And if the font's small, that's okay. We're looking at it on a tablet. We can just pinch and zoom and get the information that we need. So we think this will be a great resource, especially for flight instructors that come from out of town. They didn't train here and they get a job in the area, and this is a great way to help them know some of the do's and don'ts. It's kind of what started this project. So anyone else have a comment on that? Go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm gonna keep moving along otherwise. We'll head over to aftw.org. Hopefully everyone here got the news. If you're not on the Facebook page, we do have an AFTW Facebook group. You can check that out. And we've announced it there, but what was talked about at the meeting 2 months ago is now on the website. It's revision 6 of the Stanfield Stack procedures. You can download it here. We were able to get the file size way down so it's easier to share. You should actually be able to just email the link is the easiest thing to share it with anybody. And summary of the changes. The feedback we've gotten so far has mostly been positive. I've been doing more private and commercial check rides the last few weeks, but the few times I've been at the stack doing instrument work, everyone's been doing a wonderful job. Thank you, everyone, for getting the word out. It seems that most everyone is doing these new abbreviated procedures. The stack was all the way up to 7,500 last time I was there, and the radio congestion was much less. It was much better. So I think that this was a good move. Thank you, everyone, for that helped on this. There was a question about, don't we still want to report, entering when we cross over the top of Stanfield the first time? And obviously that's a very high risk time. And it's something that we gave a lot of serious thought to. The reason we took that one out, just to share the logic with everyone, and it can be changed. Remember, this is a leaderless organization, so we just kind of go by the voice of the people here. But the idea was that we're making the 2-minute out call. And anything within the 2 minutes, you're in the danger zone, is the way I look at it. Your eyes should be outside. You should be on the edge of your seat. And so really that 2-minute out call is what we're focusing on for the kind of the last call, like I'm here. And then besides that, we're making the calls for every altitude change. And when things are moving quickly, you might change altitudes, 2 or 3 times from the time you make that 2-minute out call. Depending on what's going on and who's where. So the fact that we're making the altitude calls every time, we felt like that was enough, and reporting actually crossing Stanfield was just an extra call. So my vote is we leave it the way we've got it, but if you guys are seeing anything different out there, by all means, speak up. And I'm not seeing anyone. Let me scroll down. Nobody's raising their hand. Nobody's unmuting. So I think silence is consensus. Let's keep moving here.
Yeah, Jim.
Please, who we got?
This
Paul?
is Paul.
Hey,
yeah, just a thought. Since I'm an amateur, but I'll just put it out there. Kind of a reason to put that call back in is that it gets a student in the habit that what's the normal procedure under instrument is that when you arrive at a fix, you let ATC know that you've arrived at that fix, and so it gets them in the habit of making that call.
Thank you for bringing that up. That actually brings up a whole nother thing that's worth mentioning. So let me give a little disclaimer by reminding everyone that the AFTW does not make policy. And for this specific Stanfield procedures, even the policymakers don't make policy for this, meaning the FAA has no jurisdiction over this. This is just a bunch of friendly people saying, hey, how about we all do it this way? So with that disclaimer being understood, one of the things that those of us that have been in the business for a while and teaching, doing check rides, all this kind of stuff, I'm not speaking for everyone, so I'll say the most common standard consensus is that to keep things realistic for the instrument applicant, we want to have the instructor / evaluator doing the real radios and have the applicant in the left seat doing simulated IFR calls to whoever they're sitting next to in the right seat. The only part that's not really realistic about that is they're not pushing the button to talk. And because you're right, the reg says whether you're in radar environment or not, reaching a holding fix or clearance limit, you should report to ATC the time and altitude that you basically entering the hold or reaching the holding fix. We don't want that call on 122.7. We don't want people calling on 122.7 saying this is Cessna so-and-so entering the hold, at 1730 Zulu. That we don't want to hear that on CTAF. But the person in the right seat should be hearing that because we're simulating a real instrument flight. So yes, the simulated call should be made over the intercom. No, we don't want to hear your time and altitude on 122.7. Does that make sense? All right, I got a thumbs up from Paul. Thank you. Good point. And I hope if we have any new instructors to the area or anyone, please, the students, the applicants should not be the ones on the real radio doing these Stanfield Stack procedures. There is nothing real IFR about this. And these procedures are really just to keep us safe while we're practicing. Along the same lines, we do have a subcommittee. Larry Taylor, DPE, has volunteered to kind of head up a small group to come up with procedures for basically coordinating between real IFR traffic and simulated IFR traffic around Stanfield. We found a few volunteers. Larry's working on getting a hold of Albuquerque Center to find out details about radar coverage. I'm not sure what's going to come out of this. My current vision is that we're going to have a very short list of procedures. Basically, do this. If it doesn't work, do this. If that doesn't work, do this, to coordinate between what Albuquerque needs the IFR traffic to do and what's happening in the stack. And then we're probably going to have a longer list of do's and don'ts, kind of reminders for important things like if you're on the long IFR cross country to meet the requirements of the instrument rating, then you need to stay IFR, and you can't just get cleared for a visual approach by Albuquerque Center. That's very important. You can't cancel IFR. Because you're IFR, you can't just pick whatever altitude you want. There's a lot of do's and don'ts that we want to make sure we keep everyone aware of, so that we don't have pilot deviations with center and we don't have conflicts with the VFR stack. So very important project. Thank you to Larry Taylor. I don't know, I didn't see Larry's name on here. Did you make it, Larry? If you are on, you can unmute and say hi, but not sure if you made it. So quick update there. Again, for anyone new, aftw.org, check that out. I'm just looking at my notes here, see if there was anything else. If you do have input, again, right here at the top says contact us. Anything that we're talking about at these meetings, please just pick one of these or even other, type us a message. We appreciate your feedback, good or bad. We prefer the good. All right. Making sure I'm not missing anything here. I think that's it for airspace. Let's go ahead and move on to airports. A lot of construction going on, I know, at Deer Valley. Go ahead and raise your hand or unmute. I'm not going to run through the list of airports. Let's just see, other than checking NOTAMs with the construction at several airports, what specifically do we have going on around the valley? Anybody want to unmute and speak up for your airport? Anybody? I know, well, I want to bring up a concern at Glendale. I shared this with some of our friends at the FSDO last month, but it seems that they're a bit understaffed, even more than usual. It is a contract tower. I understand the special challenges with that, but I wanted to bring it up to this group at the AFTW that I personally have observed some pretty poor service at Glendale. If anyone else here has experienced anything, please let us know. But it was June 6th that there was a Sierra Charlie plane in front of us, and we were trying to get in, and there was basically one person in the pattern, and the controller at Glendale was saying that they were too busy to work us. And it seemed a little bit ridiculous, frankly. So I took a recording from Live ATC. I shared it with the FSDO. I'm like, what's going on here, guys? And the response we got back from the manager was basically, hey, we're understaffed, COVID-19. Okay, the world's in turmoil right now. We can cut people slack for that. But now here we are, more than a month later, and I just got denied service there again this morning. I had an early flight before the meeting this morning. We just needed 3 times around the pattern. Again, one person in the pattern, and Glendale denies us service. Okay, yeah, it's a contract tower, but it's not a private airport. This is a public use airport, and we're having to go from Deer Valley all the way from the Northwest practice area down to Goodyear just to get the landings we need. It's a commercial check ride. We need a short approach. Getting that at Deer Valley is almost impossible. It's like we don't have a lot of options. So I personally am kind of disappointed. I guess what I'm sharing is I'm not going to be nominating Glendale for Control Tower of the Year anytime soon. But anyone else want to chime in? Ernie, have you heard anything else?
It's Ernie.
Yeah, go ahead.
For anybody who's interested, the Glendale RSAT is tomorrow morning at 9. If you're interested in attending, send me an email and I will send you the Zoom information to get on.
It's probably good that I'm doing a check ride tomorrow morning because I might get a little fired up if I went to that meeting. If you can't tell. So, all right.
Fine.
Josh, what's up?
Hi. So we recently had an RSAT meeting for Gateway. Jim, to your point, we have the same issues at Gateway with denial of service. It's gotten better with volume being down, but We have a huge incoming class in the fall with ASU. I fully anticipate we're going to be right back where we were when we pick up activity again. But Ernie, you mentioned the RSAT, but at the RSAT we had for Gateway, we were told that is not the space to address these types of issues. So I feel like I'm getting conflicting messages here. Or are you just acknowledging the RSAT as a separate entity?
I am acknowledging the RSAT, and when we talk about some of the issues, some of the things we can talk about, some of the things they can't do anything about. What we were talking about at Gateway is a little bit different than what we're talking about at Glendale. At Gateway, they do have the staffing, and we talked about staffing there. At Glendale, we don't know. We need to talk to Mike and see what's going on. So I'll talk to him before tomorrow and see what the issue is. I think that Tina has talked to Mike, and I think that Craig has talked to Mike, but we can talk to Mike and ask him if he'll address these issues tomorrow, because this is 2 times from Jim and several times from other people, and I've heard quite a few people say we just don't go to Glendale anymore.
Yeah, not cool. Carrie, did you have something?
I can echo your experience, Jim. I was over in the pattern on many occasions, and particularly if a AeroGuard Mesquite airplane calls in, the controller, one particular controller seems to have some personal animus against those airplanes and denies them entrance into the pattern. Not only that, he uses his opportunity to educate pilots, and we have to remember this is a student environment, on proper radio calls, and sometimes he's rather rude on the radio. I think it's totally unprofessional, and it does need to be brought up.
Thank you. So I don't know, there's a lot we can do in this group right here other than, being aware, and everyone keep your eyes and ears open, and know that, even though it's a contract tower, it's still our tax dollars, and we have a right to express our opinions and to request corrections. So, power in numbers. So thank you. All right. Did anyone else have anything specifically about airports that we should share? Go ahead, Paul.
This is Paul. Yeah, while we're over on that side of the valley, I fly out of Goodyear a lot. And I didn't get in time when we were talking about the instrument procedures. But along with airport service and all of that, is there some knowledge as to, it seems the Goodyear Tower is a little reluctant to let us do practice GPS runway 3 approaches. It's kind of a hit or miss, and they're really not that busy in airport. So I didn't know if this group had a little insight on that. And my background, the bulk of my training was at Centennial Airport in Denver. It's a Class Delta, 2 parallel runways. It's busy. And so when I got down to Goodyear Class Delta, I thought, boy, these guys have a walk in the park down here compared to Centennial. So I'm just throwing it out if there's some insight on this.
Jim, I can help a little on that.
Who's that?
Lisa.
Lisa, go for it.
Okay, yeah. Our school's at Goodyear, and sometimes they have only one person on staff at certain times. And for a while there, it was on a regular basis, like between 8 and 9 in the morning, and like around between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. And they wouldn't let us do that. That was when they were allowing us to do the GPS approach runway 3 when 2-1 was in use. Then we started getting busier with general desire to do the approaches, and then they stopped allowing us to do the GPS approach at all when 2-1 was in use. Is that what you were running into? Was Paul, was runway 2-1 in use when you tried to get in there?
Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. I don't remember the specifics. It's been a while ago, and then I talked to some of the other instructors, and it was just kind of, oh yeah, they don't give us the GPS too often. My counter to your point is, okay, so what? Do a GPS runway 3 circle to land on 2-1. What's the big deal? Or just do a missed and turn early. There again, my experience back at Centennial was they do that all the time. We could do GPS runway 28 and we'd just go miss before we get to the threshold. It was handled completely different than here.
And I'll answer Captain Bob's question. No, we do not go through Luke. Okay, yes, for a while there in the beginning, you know, because as maybe all of you know, we had bonanzas for many decades here, and we finally got glass in our Cirruses here, and we were able to do the GPS approach into Goodyear. And it took Goodyear Tower a while to kind of figure out how to handle the high workload that this brought, the higher workload. And as you know, Chandler will not let you circle either. You know, you would think circling would be easy peasy, but I guess an airport can choose whether they'll let you do this or not. And I think sometimes it depends on whether there's one controller on staff at the moment. I'm not real sure what the other one's doing, and they might be taking a break or whatever, or how many planes are in the pattern. But I can get some information on that and try to get it out to everybody. I can call the tower when we're done and see where they stand with everything. Would everybody like me to do that? And I don't know how would I be able to get that message back to everybody?
You know, Lisa, if you want to just thank you for doing that. I think that would be good information. Are you in the Facebook group for AFTW?
No.
If you want to just email me, just jim@jimpitman.com, or you can go through the contact page. I'm not the one that gets that directly, but someone will forward that to me. And then one of us can share your feedback, whatever you find on the Facebook group. We know that Facebook's not perfect. You know, not everyone's there. There's certainly a lot of reasons to not be there. But if you're one that feels that way, we hope that you're at least there for the AFTW and maybe some other pilot groups where it's just tough to have a meeting place online where we can share information and feedback like this. Email should be the easy way to do it, but with spam filters and managing an email list as people change their email address, it was too much. It's just not working. So between these meetings and the Facebook page, this is kind of our the best solution we've come up with for communicating those kinds of things. So yeah, if you want to just email me directly, that's great.
Sure, I'll do that because it has changed because their staffing has changed. They lost some people, and I'm not real sure where they stand with that. So it has changed for us as well. Normally, they know our training, that we need to get in approaches, and they really try their best to see that we get what we need. Normally, trust me, there's a good group up there. So, okay, I'll try to get the most current thing from them, and I'll pass it on to Jim.
Very good. Kevin, did you have something you want to say? I see you unmuted.
Yeah, just to give you a heads up over here at Falcon Field, the tower actually went into normal hours of operation from 5:30 to 9 p.m. and that started on Saturday, July 4th. They said that they don't quite have the entire staff back, but they said that they will be actually they're back to normal operation on last Saturday on July 4th. So they were down. I think they only had one person in the tower at one time running both ground and landings, and now they're back to full staff now.
All right, very good. Any other airport updates real quick? All right. Kind of going along with airspace. Gold, did you have any updates? We appreciate you being part of the group, and how's everyone been out there at Rio Verde flying around?
Everything has been nice. Yeah, nothing new to really report. I've seen some changes. I mean, a couple of schools have really. I guess there's a new school at Scottsdale, and then another school has really increased their fleet. So they're kind of spreading out to other places other than in Rio Verde. So even though they've increased their fleet, it hasn't been an increase in traffic, at least for us. So that's been nice.
Very good. Glad to hear it. Good work, everyone. Keep it up. And we know it's a constant battle for the managers at the flight schools as instructors come and go. And we got to get all the new people up to speed and what's going out there in the Northeast. So just, we got the guidance there at aftw.org. And thank you again, Goal, for everything you're doing to help out.
Yes. Thank you all.
All right. And then I think that covers it for airports. Let me take one more look, see if anyone else unmuted or raised their hand. If you have something, jump in. So as far as training updates, I mean, there's a lot of overlap here. We already talked about the procedures. Oh, I want to say Paul was one of our people that really has been helping with put the rough draft together for the recommended instrument procedures. Thank you, Paul. We really appreciate all your hard work there. And I was going to mention, you know, I'm not reading all the chat. There's too much going on there for me to keep up on. So Ernie, hopefully you're watching that if there's something we need to talk about. But I did see someone say something about being on with Luke, and it depends. You know, I know with my experience doing the GPS approach into Glendale, just as a quick example, this is actually part of the reason that we even got the idea to make this document, these recommended procedures, is a lot of time, like if you call Luke for the GPS approach into Glendale, they're happy to work you. They'll clear you for the approach. And then halfway through, they'll tell you remain clear of the Goodyear Class Delta airspace. Well, if you actually stay clear of the Goodyear Delta airspace, you can't fly the approach the way that it's published and really can't count it for a check ride or an IPC or anything official. So what I started doing a while back is I don't even bother talking to Luke. I stay clear of the SATR, again, as the evaluator / instructor, whatever I'm doing, on the radios, simulating calls to whoever I'm talking to in the left seat. And I just call up Goodyear and tell them I'm doing the GPS approach into Glendale and request to transition their airspace. And I think they do, it's been a little while since I've done it, but I think they say maintain at or above 2,500 until crossing I-10. And it turns out that that's almost exactly where, in an airplane that has WAS, where you intercept the glide path to do the WAS approach into Glendale runway 1. And it works out great if you transition the Goodyear Delta airspace. So that's just one example, and we have examples like this all over town where sometimes it's better to talk to Phoenix, or sometimes it's better to talk to Luke, or sometimes it's better just to talk to the practice area and keep, you know, do your own vectoring and that kind of stuff. And every airport's unique. And then the winds switch and you go to the other runway and everything changes, and there's totally different what's best when you're going the other way. So it's a lot of work putting all these details into the document, and appreciate the guys that are helping us do that. So check it out. Again, very rough draft, but we look forward to any feedback, and that's that. So we had, as far as training updates, I wanted to bring up something, put on my DP hat as a designated examiner, and something that's come up in training with the examiners, and I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention here. Let me see if I can do this. Everyone, make sure I'm not just sending that to one person. Actually, hold on. What was this link? Well, because I just pasted that one, we're going to talk about that first. This was the one from Lee. Lee, if you can unmute again, this was the one from the AIM. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention because I thought it was a good question. When you look at 4-3, let me go ahead and minimize this. Sorry, so much going on. So the link that I just sent everyone, this is not the DPE thing I was going to talk about, but it's just what I had copied and ready to share. So it's 4-3-21, and then paragraph Charlie. Hopefully you guys are still seeing that. Where are we at? 4-3-21. The link takes you to the top of the page, of course. Lee, did you unmute?
Yes.
Go ahead and tell us what your question was about this letter to airmen, or letter for airmen, I think is what they called it.
Oh, Rick Whitaker, he's in attendance. He was
okay. If Rick wants to chime in, that would be great. So paragraph C. Because I had never heard of this, and I don't even know what it's referring to. But it says all approach control facilities and ARTCCs are required to publish a letter to airmen depicting those airports where they provide standard separation to both VFR and IFR aircraft conducting practice instrument approaches. I know that this just came up. I think I just got the email, so I was curious if you guys had any answers yet, or where we're at on that. I just wanted to kind of bring it to everyone's attention that we're trying to get an answer to where do we find those letters, or what's in those letters.
Captain Bob pointed it out to me that if you go to NOTAMs for a particular airport and you scroll down all the way to the bottom, the LTAs can be found there. a great resource.
Okay. Very good.
And Rick, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Hi, this is Rick Whitaker. We've been in communication with the Tucson TRACON about the potential of a letter to airmen dealing with practice approaches to Marana. And what we learned was that there is no letter to airmen per se for those approaches to Marana. And the apparent rationale behind that is that they do not provide separation, they being the TRACON, for the instrument approaches to Marana because it's a non-tower airport. So non-tower airport, no separation per se, therefore no letter to airmen. And we are working with TRACON since they have agreed to consider additional wording to their instrument approach dialogue, or their approach clearance dialogue, since they do provide a clearance, well, I should say separation up to the point where you start the approach, but not after. But anyway, again, they've told us they would entertain additional wording on the approach clearance verbiage to perhaps alert pilots and focus pilots on the fact that they are approaching a non-towered airport and they need to be taking additional steps for safety in that situation since they don't have a tower to rely upon.
Got it. Very good. Well, we appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing down there in the Tucson area and in between Tucson and Phoenix. Anyone else have any comments on that? Go ahead and unmute. Matt, unmuted. Did you have something, Matt, or are you just new and so you're unmuted? Glad you made it, Matt. If anyone has any questions for Phoenix TRACON, Matt is here, happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, Matt, you can go ahead and mute yourself out just in case you have any background noise. And okay, so now the one that I thought I had ready to copy and paste is a link to the regs. Can't have an AFTW meeting without talking about regulations, right? So let me switch this back, and this has to do with commercial pilot training for the initial commercial certificate, and the reference is 61-129. Let me start by emphasizing and clarifying what I'm about to talk about does not apply to Part 141 training. For Part 141, simply follow the approved training course outline and do what you need to do and everything's good. For anyone who's applying for their initial commercial certificate under the rules of Part 61, this is something that has come up in training, and it has to do with the 10 hours of instrument time. So we're talking 61-129 A3I right here. And I am happy to admit in front of everyone, full disclosure, that my interpretation of this, the way I looked at this when I was a flight instructor over 20 years ago as a new CFII, and when I was in management as chief flight instructor for many years at a very large flight school, the way we always looked at this paragraph was, oh, if the person has an instrument rating, we got that covered. Done deal. As logical as that is, the FAA is not happy with that. If that's what the FAA wanted, they would have what we wish they had here, which would be something that says, if the applicant already holds an instrument rating, then this paragraph does not apply. That would be nice. Unfortunately, that's not what it says. What it says is we need to have this 10 hours of training for this particular check ride. So the solution's pretty easy, and I know ATP and probably others, but I'll give a shout out to ATP because I know they're doing this company-wide, or at least that's what I was told. And they are simply documenting when they have a Part 61 student, and here's what the recommendation is to everyone. You don't have to do 10 extra hours of instrument training. You just need to make sure that when you have someone that's going through the usual flow of private, instrument, and then commercial, during the instrument training, there's 4 items here that need to specifically be logged for Part 61-129. In other words, you're getting a head start on the commercial training while they're still doing their instrument, which for Part 61 is just fine. The 4 things are, I was going to highlight them here, specifically using a view limiting device. I'm sorry, that's not one of the 4. Instrument training using view, including right here, attitude, instrument flying, partial panel skills, recovery from unusual attitudes, and intercepting and tracking navigational system. Those 4 things are worded differently here than they're worded in 6165, which is the instrument requirement. So I know on the surface this seems like a nitpicky thing, and I admit as a DP, this is one of those things that no one's ever going to care unless there's a problem, unless there's an accident, there's an investigation, the lawyers get involved, the FAA gets involved, everyone starts, going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. It's very black and white that to qualify under 61-129, this training needs to be completed and properly logged. So if you have someone who's going on a commercial check ride, Part 61, there's nothing wrong with going back in their instrument training and finding times when this training was legitimately completed. And because those 4 things are pretty basic, right? Anyone who has an instrument rating has done those things, but just put a little note in the remarks. This is the suggestion from the FAA, is to just say that this flight was for 61-129, if you want to be real specific, A3I. And as long, when we're doing the commercial check rides, as long as we can see that there's 10 hours at least covering those 4 areas, we got that box checked. And hopefully someday, Ernie or Craig or anyone else, if we can run this up the FAA flagpole, it would make so much more sense to just have something here that says, unless the applicant has if the applicant has an instrument rating, this paragraph does not apply. But maybe 5 or 10 years the FAA will get that done. Susan, can you work on that for us? I don't know. So anyone want to disagree with anything I just said? Speak now or send us an email. But that, again, I know it's kind of a little detail, and the norm, at least here in Arizona for many years, has been to ignore that paragraph when they have an instrument rating, but that we really can't do that because we need to do what it says. So just document it during instrument. Shouldn't be any extra flight time for the customer. We just need to have it documented that they're actually getting a head start for their commercial. And I think that was everything. How do I make this big again? Come on, Zoom. There we go. So while I'm looking over my notes, Ernie, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or anyone else you can unmute and shout at me?
Hey, Craig, didn't you have something that Tina wanted you to bring up?
Wake up, Craig. What you got?
Well, if I did, I'm not finding it.
Uh-oh.
All right, hang on. I got it. Let's see. The near miss at Marana.
Oh, yes. If we have Lee or Brian, you guys want to talk about that? I think that would be good to talk about. Thank you. I did not have that on the agenda. Take it away, Lee.
Brian, did you want to address it, or shall I?
Go ahead, Lee.
There was traffic in the pattern, and a student pilot came in on a 90-degree angle to downwind, and the flight instructor who reported it estimated it at 50 feet separation. It was very close, and the owner of the aircraft, Jessica Cox, had cameras set up on her plane because she's preparing to make a video for a virtual air show. So it's all on tape. And I've got
72 passed right directly in front of her, and you can see it about 7 minutes into the video. You can see it fly right underneath her, and I would say, 50, less than 100 feet.
This is partly what has really driven the comments that Brian was making. It's an example of why there needs to be more training, we think.
Yeah, Yeah, glad it was just a near miss and not a collision. Wow, that's pretty crazy. And I assume, I mean, we know who the pilot was. Have they been given their remedial training, and is all that taken care of? I trust.
It was handed over. Ernie, can you speak to that?
I don't have the pilot's name. I don't know.
I wasn't asking for the name. Just I trust you guys are on it.
I don't know if it got reported as a near miss or not.
I believe both Jessica Cox and Sandy King reported it, and they did identify the student pilot and talk to the flight school.
Okay, good.
So, yes, I
So
hope that.
So if they report it as a near miss, then our office will get it and we'll investigate it if we haven't.
All right, very good. All right, guys. So that's everything on my agenda. Jeff, did you unmute on purpose? Did you have anything you want to share, Jeff Yost? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Anyone else? Any miscellaneous topics? While you guys are thinking about that, I'll tell you the next meeting, if I did this correctly. Go on second Wednesday will be every other month. We'll do September 9th at 9:30 a.m. Don't know yet whether it'll still be on Zoom. Stay tuned to the normal channels, basically Facebook and FAA.
Hey, Jim, can you hear me now?
Hey, we got you. Is that Jeff?
Hey. Yeah, this is Jeff. Hey, I'm the air traffic control coordinator with Allegiant Airlines. Just a couple things I wanted to talk about because it's been a while since we've been down there, and some of the things that we've done internally within the company, if you don't mind.
It's all yours. Thank you.
Yeah. So a while back, we instituted the RNAV visual approach procedure, the 30 left at Gateway. We briefed that at the AFTW and what our track actually looks like, the 30 left. We've seen a marked improvement in TCAS events, and it really shows that the safety of having that procedure in place and having all the GA operators understand where we are on a letdown coming in off AJ right there by Apache Junction. So with that being said, what we've done as a company with all the construction going on at Gateway and all the 30 left being close to probably a rehab project coming up, we decided to institute an RNAV visual to 30 center. Now that is work in progress right now with the Phoenix Tracon. And what we've done with that is we are waiting right now for approval from the FAA. The track basically is identical with one new final approach fix. So we have seen a marked improvement since instituting the RNAV visuals to 30 left. And we appreciate everybody's, consideration with that. We come off of AJ, we hug that line right there on the Class Bravo on the southeast side and go over Rittenhouse before we turn in. Stabilized approach criteria, really safe for our crew. It's easy to manage and definitely, it's a benefit to everybody, not just us as well as the GA community, because most of the time when they're on 30 left, our crews have a standing request to ask for that procedure. And Phoenix Tracon has been absolutely great in allowing that procedure for us. So we're just waiting on the approval for 30 center. Another thing that we've done when Gateway is on the 12s, we've asked our crews to enter a midfield downwind. This comes from a near midair that we almost had right there between Falcon's Class Delta and Gateway's Class Delta, coming in that little sliver right there by the mall. So most of the time, Phoenix Tracon, again, has been really good with this, getting us to a midfield entry on the downwind for our Airbuses. And so we get into controlled airspace much quicker, and we stay in there. We stay out of that corridor between Falcon and Gateway. And once again, we've seen a huge decrease in TCAS events and incidents down there. So we think we're heading in the right direction, and we just want to thank everybody for just keeping an eye out. And I think the procedure is actually published on I think Brett Crow actually put the procedure on the AFTW website. So I think that's on there. So when we get 30 center out and running, we'll get that over to everybody also.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate the update, and thank you to everyone for being part of the solution on that. Let me, just since you brought it up, let me just see if we can find that real quick. I don't fly out in that part of town very often, but let's see how user-friendly our website is here. If we just look down the side here.
Hey, Jim, Carrie reminded me of something.
Go for it. I'll try not to embarrass myself searching on on our own website.
Okay, the POG for August has been canceled, and they're holding out for the November POG. So that's to be determined. We'll see what happens down the road.
All right, so that's the Phoenix Airspace Users Group. And did I have that date right for the next AFTW meeting on September 9th?
Yeah, the Ryan RSAT is scheduled for that day as well.
Do you know, Ernie, what the document or the post was called that Jeff is talking about for the visual for Allegiant? Jeff, do you know what we called it? Hopefully we got it posted. The way this this website is set up is everything's done as like a blog post, and we got 10 pages of posts here. But I'm wondering, because I'm not the one that's doing the website updates these days. Oh, here we go, safety. I think we got it, Jeff. So right under the safety menu, it says Phoenix Mesa Gateway Arrival and Departure Procedures LOA. So I'm guessing this is it. Yep, Allegiant RNAV visual 30 left. And there you go. So right under the safety menu, that's all people need.
And Jim, just one more thing on that.
Yep.
Yeah. So the RNAV visual, that's kind of a, Southwest Airlines was kind of like the pioneer in these many years ago. It allowed visual approach procedures with predetermined track with altitudes. And we think that's the greatest benefit because everybody knows exactly what altitude we're going to hit those fixes at. So when they look at those, I think it's really important looking at those altitudes if we are on the RNAV visual. And it's really a good tool for the controllers too, because it allows them to adequately space aircraft and really is very beneficial for everybody.
Definitely. Yeah, that's great. Well done. So did you guys have a team in-house that made this from scratch? That's pretty cool.
Well, we did work with Phoenix Tracon on that tirelessly. We went back and forth in the airport, myself, the regional chief pilot, and we went back and forth with the Tracon and came up with points and altitudes that worked for everybody. And so once we got in place, we were definitely seeing a significant decrease in TCAS events.
Very good. All right, there we are. Let's see. Anyone else? Final things here as we finish up?
Yeah, Jim.
Who's that?
This is Paul.
Go for it, Paul.
Just if you'd like to respond offline, I just wanted to catch you right now. I just need a little guidance on what else you'd like me to do to help out with that practice approach guide. And you're welcome to answer that offline. I just wanted to catch you.
No, I'm happy to answer it here. You kind of let everyone know where we're at. So we still have a few blanks on there as far as airports that need guidance. I have not had spare time. In fact, if we're looking for a silver lining of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's the fact that several of us had the time to do this back in April. So we kind of had a big push and we made a lot of progress. And now there's no lack of demand for check rides right now. So free time on my part is very limited, or discretionary time, I should call it. And a lot of the other guys, like I already mentioned, Stacy and Brent are just slammed right now at work. So everyone's got the link. We shared it in the chat today. That we're talking about the recommended instrument procedures. Look at it. If you have some experience as an instructor or even as an instrument pilot and you want to contribute, even though you can't edit that document, we would love to have you just type out your notes and submit them at the aftw.org website. But really, Paul, that's the next step, is let's get all the blanks filled in. And if there's an airport you're like, I don't know what to put there, I've never flown an approach there, maybe post something at the Facebook page, be like, hey, I we're looking for someone that's familiar with such and such approach. Can you work with me and write a couple paragraphs? Many hands makes light work. So once we have all the blanks filled in, I think the next step is to come up with 2 or 3 of us that are willing to just go through and proofread and edit and condense and try to get it as brief as possible. And then from there, we'll send it out to everyone for comments and have, there'll be revisions, there'll be updates like everything we do, but that's kind of what I see as the next few steps moving forward. So good question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Kerry, what you got?
Kerry's got his hand up. Go ahead and unmute, Kerry. Or he's just playing with Zoom.
All right. The question I have for Jeff on those RNAV visual approaches, are those going to be published, or are they internal for Allegiant only?
What do you mean by published? I mean, other than we're sharing them on the AFTW website, are you saying they would come up automatically in ForeFlight?
Well, they'd be a published approach that would be accessible for anybody.
So you're talking about making it FAA official to the point like we have the visual approaches into San Francisco, if anyone's ever done those ones.
Yeah, the FMS bridge visual.
Yeah. So those kinds of approaches. Jeff, are you still on? I don't know if he had to drop off. He was obviously on his phone. He may have had to go. Oh no. Well, it says he's connected, but we don't have audio on him, so he might just be in a bad signal area. So that's a great question. Matt, are you still on? Do you know?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Official? Yeah, go ahead, Matt. How official is that procedure compared to something like the bridge visual into San Francisco?
It is a company only procedure. Just like in JFK, there's a lot of RNAV visual approaches for JetBlue. They're not shared and they're not for public use. They have to be on an LOA. So
got it. So so it's not the same, and
it is not the same.
And
no.
we're not gonna. Is there? I imagine that's a big step to go that next step and make it because then anyone could fly it, right, without an LOA. So.
There are charted visual approaches around the country. We don't have any charted visual approaches in the Phoenix area, but like you said, like San Francisco has them, New York has them, a lot of the bigger cities, congested airspace has them. But the airline specific, those are all over the place. I know Scottsdale's working on, or there's another carrier that's working on one for, I think, Scottsdale, but I'm not quite sure which one.
Gotcha. So basically, from what you're saying, my understanding is this is a company procedure. They're operating on a letter of agreement with the FAA, and Allegiant is being very nice and helpful by sharing it with the AFTW so that we can at least get it out to our local community. And
that is my understanding, yes.
The more GA pilots that know about it, the better. So spread the word. It's an easy PDF to share. Share the link. There's obviously, like I had up there a few minutes ago, there's a lot of good information there. So good question, Kerry. Thank you. All right, guys.
And Jim, while I'm not muted,
yeah.
I'm sorry. One last thing. The letter to Airmen, Captain Bob keeps sharing. There's one for Chandler. There's one for Gateway, Falcon, Scottsdale. The Scottsdale one is the reason that we we got rid of the VOR Charlie approach. That's why we can no longer accommodate those practice approaches into Scottsdale, just because the letter to Airmen make us use IFR separation between those practice approaches and the air carriers going into Sky Harbor. We're in a process of a new LOA with Deer Valley, and I believe there will be a new letter to Airmen, the same type of letter to Airmen going into Deer Valley as well in the future. So
thank you. So, I think I looked at those not too long ago on our website, and I don't even remember if it's on the practice right here. Nope, that one's for Luke. Where did we put those, Matt? Do you know? Because last time I looked, it said at least the ones we had on the website were expired, and it sounds like we have some updates we need to get posted on the website.
Yeah, I think Captain Bob just posted 2 to the chat. One for the Scottsdale that became effective last July. Chandler should be still active.
You know what? I'm going to copy the whole chat right now and save that. I think our friends at the FAA are going to have their own recording of all this. But now I've got it. All right. So, we'll make sure that we get the updated ones on the aftw.org website because I don't remember where I found them, but the ones I was looking at were expired for the approaches like going into Scottsdale. So, all right. Very good. And any final comments? We don't have to drag this out for 2 hours. We can let you all get back to work. So I think we're good. So let me just say thank you everyone for being here live. The the AFTW only works with volunteers, and just being here and participating and helping to spread the word is a big part of it. So thank you. For anyone watching this recording, hopefully it worked. And we ask you to please encourage other flight school managers that maybe don't know about this, or maybe they're reluctant to come for some reason. We'd love to have every flight school represented at every meeting. And again, I know Facebook's not perfect, but if you're not already there, please consider at least being on Facebook for this. It takes a little bit of effort, but if you go into your Facebook settings, you can lock down and basically make yourself invisible to the world, but still be able to log in and go to AFTW's Facebook page. So there are still some good things on Facebook, and we hope that the AFTW communication is one of them. And I encourage you to communicate and be with us there. Susan, I want to put you on the spot. Are you allowed to tell us what you've been up to lately? I've been so impressed over the years with all the great projects and things that you've been a part of. Can you tell us what's new at the what you see going on at the FAA at your level?
Well, first of all, what's new for me is I'm actually on leave this week, which is why I could join this meeting. Normally I have a conflict.
You come and join us on your time off? I feel extra special now.
I did. Oh, come on. I love you guys. Yeah, I mean, we have not been able to have the Air ACS face-to-face working group face-to-face. We had to miss the March meeting entirely because of COVID. We had a one-day virtual meeting in June. We're trying to keep things moving forward, but they're making great progress with things like, you've seen the new instructor handbook, which the community contributed to. And some of the things that I've heard, like, why did you do learner rather than student? Actually, we took the suggestions from the community on a lot of things like that. The risk management handbook, the community team has put together a draft that we're trying to move forward on. So there's that. And then Safety Briefing Magazine, the new one is out. Human factors is the topic. The last one was aviation communications, and we got a lot of positive feedback on that. So hopefully you all will also find the human factors focus issue helpful. And I think I just finished my writing for the next one. It's always something going on. So thanks for the opportunity to join you, and I will do that whenever I can.
Well, we sure appreciate it, and everything you're doing at the national level. At the risk of putting you on the spot, and if the answer is you don't know, then that's fair. Let me ask it this way. We are hoping, maybe even expecting, though that might be a little too much hope, that when the next instrument ACS comes out, that they are going to remove the 300-foot stipulation related to counting an LPV as a precision approach for purposes of the check ride. Can you give us any indication of whether we have false hopes on that, or whether you see anything on your end?
The answer is that I don't know, because I am not involved in the day-to-day discussions. I got my role was to get it all started, but the teams, the policy divisions get together and they evaluate those things, and I honestly don't know where it is. So that's
no worries, and we understand it'll happen when it happens, but we're here in the Phoenix area. It's something that really is a safety issue. So hopefully sooner rather than later. Have you submitted that as a change driver request? Yeah, we actually did, we kind of did it in two parts. We submitted an official proposal that the overall long-term change be what we just talked about, and then we're also requesting a short-term exemption. Basically, we're hoping that the FAA will give Phoenix area flight schools the option to be exempt from that 300-foot requirement. And we have not heard anything back on that yet. Unless, Craig, if you have any updates, of course, we'd love to hear it. But we ran it up the flagpole, and we're waiting for the flag to come back down. So.
Well, I don't know where those things are, but I can tell you that most of the agency has been, and certainly most of the people who would be normally looking at those kinds of issues, which would be the policy divisions, and there are several that would be involved, and the legal staff, which would have to be involved, especially for an exemption. They've been, let's just say that the SFAR that came out and then the extension to the SFAR, you probably wouldn't believe how much work goes into that. So a lot of the energy and focus has had to go toward other things over the past few months.
Yeah, that is definitely understandable. Well, thank you again for being here. And Glenn unmuted. Was that on purpose? Did you have something to share, Glenn?
Negative.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. All right. With that, everyone, again, look forward to seeing everyone probably on Zoom. Maybe I'll say it that way. Maybe in person. We'll see. But September 9th at 9:30 a.m. Stay tuned. And thank you again. We'll talk to you all later. Take care.